Hours, and I'm here today with another little tip for you. I was asked by a friend to make a baby quilt, and it is something that's got the sew and flip method, and so I just thought I'd show you how I do that and how I mark my machine. This is the pattern that I'm going to be making, this octagonal shape here. It comes originally from a book by Carrie Nelson, and it's in her book, but she said hers totally differently, and I'll show you that in just a second. But I added the sashing and the cornerstones, frankly, so that I could use one charm pack to get it done, and then I quilted it with just a meander and a minky on the back. But I was able to use one charm pack to make this baby quilt. So anyway, my friend really liked the pattern. So over here, I've got to make 100 of those units. And this is the book. Here's the book, Another Bite of Schnibbles, for 5 and 10-inch squares. So I started with a charm pack on that other quilt, but this one I used yardage and just cut strips as she told us to. But you can see in her setting she didn't use any sashings, and so it was kind of a small quilt, so I wanted mine a little bigger. So that's why I made the sashing and stuff. But what I want to show you is, so I had to do 100 of these, and rather than what she tells you in the directions is to take your squares, where are you? To take your squares and draw a diagonal line, sew on that diagonal line, and then flip it over. Well, what I did instead of drawing 100 diagonal lines, I decided to mark my machine. And the way I do that is I put my needle down, I line up a ruler so that I have a right angle. So I use this piece of my machine. You probably have a straight line. I could have used this line and that line to get it nice and square. And then with my ruler up next to my needle, then I can put my foot down, it holds it there, and then I put this piece of tape. And what I'll do is, I'll show you right quickly. So I have these pieces that stick together. There we go. And I lay this down. I put my square on top and line it up perfectly. You know, there's only 3 things you have to do for good quilting, perfect quilting. You have to cut it right, sew it right, and press it right. And there's only 3 things you have to do wrong. Cut it wrong, sew it wrong, press it wrong. So we've cut these right because they're nice and square. So what I've done here is I have just started it, and I had my needle at the beginning at the corner, and I'm just going to stitch straight. Now I know that my needle, when I put my foot on the gas, my needle is going to go up and down. Okay, so I don't have to watch my needle. What I'm watching is this point right here, and it's going to follow the edge of that tape and go in perfectly straight. Now, I could just trim this off. I've got a whole lot of these made now. Trim this off and waste that. But what I did instead, let me grab one. You're going to be the victim. Instead of wasting that, I am going to line up, after I'm done with all of them, and again, I'm assembly line sewing, I'm going to line up this previous stitching line to the edge of my presser foot. And I'm going to stitch along there. Then I can come in here with scissors and trim this out. I use a 2.0 stitch length, so I know it's not going to go anywhere. That's not going to come out, even though it's a narrow seam allowance. And then I get this unit that I need for my quilt. I get this bonus unit that I can then use. I may use it in the border, or I may use it to make another tiny small quilt. I've got some over here I was doing earlier, so you could lay these out to make a little pinwheel or broken dishes block, all kinds of blocks that you could make with these triangles and put them together to make a big quilt. So that's just a little tip today. Mark your machine instead of drawing them 100 or more lines. Thank you.